Welcome back to the world today. To the United States now, the state of Washington to be exact. Authorities saying 5 people have been killed in a shooting at a home near Seattle and that a 15-year-old boy is in custody. 3 children and 2 adults were killed. The King County Sheriff's Department says a girl who lived in the house was also injured. The Sheriff's Department spokesperson Mike Mellis told reporters at the scene the suspect was taken into custody by deputies without incident. It's not immediately clear if all those involved were members of the same family, and the Sheriff's Department says is still working to determine a motive for the violence. The Sheriff's Department does say deputies responded to multiple calls about gunfire in a home in Fall City, about 10 miles east of Seattle, early on Monday. A neighbor with some medical training was able to administer first aid before first responders arrived. Our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, joins us now. Maria, have authorities been able to establish a motive for the shooting?
Authorities are in the process of arraigning the 15-year-old that they did take into custody. He will have his first appearance later this afternoon, and that's when they'll begin to look at kind of the motives. At this time, they say there potentially is some family relation with these individuals, but they are just not clear as to exactly what's happened. They've been very limited with information that they provided, obviously, due to this still being a very active crime scene, active case, trying to figure out, to your point of the motive. They've not released names, they've not released ages, so there's still a lot to be unfolded as a result of this. This is not something that's expected in this community. You're talking about a suburban area outside of Seattle, Washington. Not often do we have these types of occurrences, and even if you think about 5 individuals in a home, and at that time of morning, and you talk about 3 of them being school-aged individuals, so younger teenagers and 2 adults, and then also a young person that was injured. So this is a very outlandish situation that authorities are really trying to wrap their arms around as to exactly what could have occurred.
Yes, it is mind-boggling, isn't it? This situation might be different on the ground for you who's in Washington, but we have hardly heard anything about gun violence in Washington or any of the surrounding states, talking about Maryland and so on. Are people allowed to carry guns in Washington?
So this is Washington State, which is in the far northwest region of the country. And so carrying is something that is legal in most of our states. And it depending on the state, is whether it's concealed or unconcealed weaponry. Most states require that people have some sort of safety mechanisms and only carry concealed, and you have to have a license. But we know, we've talked about it before, is that the thoughts around who's being able to give a license, the type of weapons that are being allowed to be purchased in the United States. AR-57s have been one that have been protested against for quite some time now. Legislators have been trying to bring more attention, one, either to a ban. Many of them believe that a ban overall, but especially a ban as to the type of weaponry. We know that the right to bear arms has continued to be one that specifically the Republican Party has been very strong on. There are also many Democrats that also are very much strong on believing that people should have the right to bear arms. But when you have these type of situations, it then further exasperates the issue around gun violence in America, especially when we have seen major challenges around mental health post-COVID, and being able to really identify those individuals who are have a license to have guns, or how people are allowing, or oftentimes, unfortunately, individuals who don't have a license are getting access to guns, and then you have these type of very devastating circumstances.
Maria, let's look at the timing of this incident. It's just a few weeks away. I mean, less than 2 weeks now from the presidential election. Could this impact people coming out to cast their ballots on November 5th?
Well, what the authorities have stated is that this is a contained situation. They believe there's no threat to the immediate community, which then tells us that there's something that they have been able to identify that does relate to an internal relationship, potentially these individuals knowing one another, so there's no external threat. So there should not be a concern around people going out to vote. But again, as you mentioned, because it's such a very pivotal election, and oftentimes even if people are not getting the full story around the fact that they don't see any community threat, that could be a prohibiting factor. But obviously, I'm sure those advocates in those communities are going to be ensuring that people know, because early voting has started in the United States, that they're, as they canvass, are letting people know that there's no safety threat as a result of this unfortunate circumstance.
Stay a bit longer on the issue of the elections. Either of the presidential candidates must have said something about this, or most likely will be addressing it in their campaigns, probably later today or early tomorrow. Vice President Harris herself believes in carrying a gun. She does have one, keeps one at home. What about the former president, Donald Trump? He's never really clearly stated what his position on carrying guns. I know that the Republicans do support carrying guns, but does Trump have a gun?
We've not yet heard him. As we mentioned, the current vice president has stated that she does carry a gun, and as we know, she was a prosecutor. She kind of has come through that law enforcement background, and so that was some of what she explained in that area. But we know, as you mentioned, the Republican Party has been a very strong proponent. We know that the former president is also a strong proponent for the right to bear arms. He has supported those measures. He is definitely a supporter of the NRA, the National Rifle Association. They have been supporters of his in the past, financial contributors to his campaign. So it is definitely expected that he also is supporting the right to bear arms. But whether or not he owns a gun, I think maybe we'll find out before the actual election day, but that has not yet been released.
And America still struggles with the issue of gun violence. Sadly, it is an issue that has been raised in many debates over the years, and then we saw it raised again in this year's debates. What are some of the new conversations that have been thrown into the mix?
So as we talk about gun violence, I think the real issue now that's being debated is mental health. I think there's additional measures being put in place, and they're looking at ways in which to be able to identify someone's mental health stability, whether or not they're having any type of challenges mentally before they purchase a gun, but also, too, for those who currently have a license, what types of checks are being done to ensure the mental health of those individuals as well. That has been one of the major areas, because when we look at over the past few years, some of the major catastrophic mass shooting challenges have been typically directly related to someone's mental health challenge. And so that has been one of the very key points over the last few years, and I think will continue to be one of the major areas of conversation, along with the type of weaponry that is allowed to be purchased in the United States.
Maria, thanks again for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you.
Speaking of the presidential candidates, the former president, Donald Trump, participated in the 11th hour faith leaders meeting with Eric Trump and Ben Carson in Concord, North Carolina on Monday. He told the crowd he likes to think that during the failed assassination attempt against him on July 13 in Butler, Pennsylvania, he was saved by being knocked to the ground by a supernatural hand. He avoided using some of the off-color rhetoric he's been using in recent speeches, but he said he looks back on his life and now recognizes it's been the hand of God leading him to where he is today.
But as I look back at my life's journey and events, I now recognize that it's been the hand of God leading me to where I am today. And my faith took on new meaning on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I was knocked to the ground, essentially, by what seemed like a supernatural hand And I would like to think that God saved me for a purpose, and that's to make our country greater than ever before. So I'm here tonight to deliver a simple message to Christians across America. It's time to stand up and save your country. But I blocked the IRS from using the Johnson Amendment to interfere with pastors' freedom of speech. I mean, we want to hear from our pastors. We don't want them to be shy. Where they take away your tax-exempt status because a pastor mentioned something that's slightly political, and I ended it. Kamala Harris has taken it away, and we're not. I'll tell you what. If you take it, she has taken your right away. I gave that to you, and they took it back. But we're going to give it back to you within the first week.
Vice President Camilla Harris and Republican former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, they wrapped up a day of bipartisan campaigning on Monday evening in the battleground state of Wisconsin. In a series of town hall-style events, the Democratic presidential nominee and Cheney appeared in Pennsylvania and Michigan to answer questions on Monday. Harris argued that Trump, the former president, was a threat to democracy. And as the election draws nearer, she's been sharp in her attacks on Trump's fitness for office, often calling him unstable and unhinged and questioning his temperament.
I think it does lead us, and it should lead us to observe that he is increasingly unstable. But you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to the people who know him best. The people who worked with him in the White House, in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room. His former chief of staff, 2 former secretaries of defense, his secretaries of defense, his former national security advisor, and of course his former vice president. And I'll add to that point, understand also what happened in the last few months when the Supreme Court essentially told the former president he will be immune from anything he does in office. So whereas before there was at least some threat of consequence and accountability, that no longer exists. And to the Congresswoman's point, imagine Donald Trump, based on everything we know about him and everything we see now and before, imagine him with no guardrails. Because all of those folks who worked with him before, they're not those who held him back, who attempted to ensure that he would follow the law, are no longer there.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris to switch to Europe now, where EU Parliament President Roberta Metsola told Moldovans their future lies within the European Union. She was responding to results showing that a slight majority of Moldovans in a referendum voted in favor of joining the European Union. The referendum, along with the presidential election, whose first round also took place on Sunday, was seen as a test of whether the former Soviet republic can escape Moscow's sphere once and for all.
The people in Moldova have chosen their future. They chose hope, stability, opportunity. They chose Europe. The European Parliament strongly condemns any activities, interference in Moldova's presidential election and constitutional referendum on EU integration. We are proud to be one of Moldova's strongest allies and supporters, and we understand that Moldova's future lies within the European Union, and we fully support its EU accession path.
With the uptick in illegal migration to Europe, Hungary, Slovakia and Serbia are pledging to continue efforts to curb the menace into the European Union. Leaders of the 3 countries say more EU funds are needed at a meeting in Camano, Slovakia, on the Hungarian border. The leaders recognized their efforts to cut the number of migrants, mainly from the Middle East and Africa, who've come via the so-called Balkan route that passes through Serbia and into the EU via Hungary. Illegal migration remains a key political problem across Europe, nearly a decade after the crisis in 2015, when around 1 million people arrived on the bloc. Arrivals last year were around a third of that figure. Junior doctors who were on a hunger strike as part of a protest against a rape and murder of a colleague in the eastern Indian city of Kolkata have called off the 17-day hunger strike, saying it was in response to an appeal by the victims' parents. Some strike participants suffered severe dehydration and had to be admitted to hospital. Other doctors also met Mamata Banerjee, the chief minister of the opposition-led West Bengal state, which has drawn scrutiny for its handling of sex crimes. During their meeting, the doctors pressed the demand for better security and conditions at government hospitals, as well as justice for the woman. The rape and murder of the doctor in early August sparked nationwide protests that month, and in September, a police volunteer was arrested for the crime. China has held a live firing exercise from its territory closest to Taiwan, just a week after it launched a large-scale drill encircling the island. Chinese military drills off the Taiwanese coast have intensified in recent years as its claims over the self-governed island have grown. Beijing announced later Monday an area around Nushan, an island 105 kilometers away from Taiwan, will be closed for drills for 4 hours from 9 a.m. local time today. Taiwan's Premier Chong Jun-tai says that China should not be conducting such exercises given its threat to regional stability. We're looking at the aftermath of the Hurricane Oscar that hit Cuba just a few days ago. A death toll rising to 6. A storm made landfall on Monday in Guantanamo. It was designated a Category 1 hurricane. The Institute of Meteorology says Oscar downgraded to a tropical storm after it began to weaken on Sunday, and it's forecast to weaken even further. Oscar lashed Cuba's eastern end, and most damages were reported in the Guantanamo province, with the San Antonio and Imayas municipalities recording historic flooding levels. Rescue operations and damage assessment are still ongoing in the Caribbean island. The struggle with months of power outages is already suffering from severe shortages of food, fuel, and medicine. Coming back to the continent, angry residents have attacked a railway guard and his post in a town outside of Cairo after a train ran over 2 people who were killed in Egypt. Officials say a crowd descended on the intersection near the town of Biladaya in the city of Al Ayat, where a train earlier killed 2 children trying to cross using an area not intended for pedestrians. Train accidents are common in Egypt. A train crashed earlier this month, killing 1 person and injuring more than 20 others in southern Egypt. In recent years, however, the government has announced initiatives to improve railways in the country. A Cameroonian president, Paul Biya, has arrived in the country. He was seen for the first time in 6 weeks, following speculation about his whereabouts and his health. State television released this footage showing the president's arrival at the airport in Yaoundé on a flight from Switzerland. The last time Biya was seen was on September 8th as he attended the China-Africa Summit in Beijing. Since then, the government has been under immense pressure to provide proof that the long-serving leader was alive. The government did ban the media from ever discussing his health. We're off on another break on The World Today. Still ahead. Oh, thousands in Australia lining up to meet and greet King Charles and Queen Camilla at the Sydney Opera House. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Nigerian Doctors Forum in South Africa, in collaboration with Nigerian and South African nurses, highlights the significant disparities between public and private healthcare. Public facilities are often overcrowded, resulting in long wait times and inadequate patient care. To address the issues, the forum recently organized a medical outreach in Johannesburg, providing free medical services to both Nigerian and South African communities. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa, was there and reports.
To address the pressing healthcare disparities in South Africa, the Nigerian Doctors Forum, in collaboration with Nigerian and South African nurses, recently organized a medical outreach in Johannesburg.
It's an annual program, but apart from the annual program, we still go to different locations. We go to different locations in South Africa here. We go to different provinces. We also engage with different associations in South Africa.
Now in its 12th year, the president of the Nigerian Doctors Forum, South Africa, Dr. Ugu Emeka, says the journey has not been without challenges.
Challenges we have, of course, we are foreigners, we remain foreigners in South Africa, and the issue of foreign nationals vis-a-vis the locals, which we're trying to push so that we integrate ourselves as much we can. In all honesty, we've tried to do this at Maponya Mall, the biggest mall in Soweto, if not in Johannesburg. We wanted to go there and give free medical services to as many South Africans, as many other nationals that are there, but we are restricted because of laws.
Channels Television spoke to several individuals who received assistance during the outreach.
So this outreach is always very profitable to a lot of both Nigerians and anyone who needs medical attention, because trying to get medication here in South Africa is a bit difficult for some people who can afford, because the economy has been a bit difficult lately.
And coming to the terms in their initiative, I would say is a very good one, because a lot of us here, we all know how expensive to go to private doctors are these days. So this type of initiative is a very good one.
Even locals received medical attention. Their stories highlight the critical need for initiatives like this.
I feel so happy. People here, they were so helpful. I came feeling some pains and I explained to them, and they gave me all the medications for the complaints that I had.
We look forward to seeing more initiatives that promote health equity, not only in South Africa, but on the continent as a whole. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simos, Channels Television News.
The former CEO of fashion giant Abercrombie and Fitch and his British partner have been arrested and are facing sex trafficking charges. Mike Jeffries, his partner Matthew Smith, and the couple's alleged middleman were arrested this morning. The FBI and prosecutor's office are expected to announce more details today. Lawyers for Jeffries and Mrs. Smith have both previously denied any wrongdoing by both men. Responding to the latest news, Mr. Jeffries' lawyer said, "We will respond in detail to the allegations after the indictment is unsealed and when appropriate, but plan to do so in the courthouse, not the media." The lawsuit also accused Abercrombie and Fitch of having funded a sex trafficking operation led by its former CEO over the 2 decades he was in charge. And thousands of Australians lined up for hours to greet Britain's King Charles and meet Queen Camilla at the Sydney Opera House. The royal couple walked through the crowd to stop to talk to well-wishers before stopping to watch a dance performance by school children. The King and Queen then boarded a boat to conduct a fleet review in Sydney's harbour. While out of the water, the Royal Australian Navy, the Australian Army and the Royal Australian Air Force conducted flypasts, and over 600 officers conducted a cheer ship salute. More on the royal couple's visit in Australia. They took the turn at grilling sausages at a community barbecue event in Western Sydney. The community gathering was designed to showcase Australia's cultural diversity and showcase the country's regional produce. The King and Queen are expected to leave Australia by tomorrow and head to Samoa for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. With a lot of fun. Now, can you imagine surfing with your eyes closed? That's what German para-surfer Ben Newman is, relying on sound and feeling while surfing, since sight is not an option for him. And that's because Ben has been blind since the age of 6 due to a genetic defect. He started surfing at the age of 13. He says surfing is therapy for him. In his words, it's important to understand the obstacles, and that's when my motto, no limits, comes into play. He's 19 years old now. He's already won a bronze medal at the World Para Surfing Championships and is hoping for a gold medal at the 2024 Championships in November in California. The sound of the waves guiding him to his gold medal. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Bani.